Mr. President, members of the Security Council, I would like first to acknowledge the presence of high-level Representative Mladenov and thank him for his tireless efforts to advance the implementation of the comprehensive plan in Gaza. As I brief you today, the situation across the occupied Palestinian territory is increasingly precarious. In the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, settlements expansion, settler-related violence, and incitement continue to drive tensions. In Gaza, delays in implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 2803, alongside with daily violence and continuing humanitarian crisis, have replaced the early momentum following the ceasefire. As talks on advancing to phase 2 of the ceasefire continue, calls are emerging in some circles for resumption of hostilities. This would have disastrous consequences for the population of Gaza. Let me be very clear. The people of Gaza cannot take more war. This scenario must be avoided at all costs. The implementation of Resolution 2803 cannot wait. All elements of comprehensive plan are interconnected and must be implemented in full. These include the disarmament of Hamas and other armed groups, Israeli withdrawal, deployment of international stabilization force. The National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, NCAG, must be enabled to take up its transitional responsibilities in coordination with the Palestinian Authority. Mr. President, as diplomatic efforts continue, people's lived reality in Gaza is marked by deep uncertainty. Israeli strikes continue on nearly daily basis, killing dozens during the reporting period, alongside armed activity by Hamas and other Palestinian groups. Israeli authorities have said that strikes by the Israeli Defense Forces have targeted Hamas militias, militants, and related infrastructure. The Israeli government said that it now controls 60% of Gaza, up from 52% since the ceasefire. Humanitarian conditions remain acute, and the population remains dependent on daily aid delivery. The reopening of Zikim crossing in mid-April and a limited increase in the volume of aid are welcome improvements. However, humanitarian operations remain heavily constrained by limited operational crossings and restrictions on critical humanitarian items that Israel considers dual use. In recent days, the entry of pest control chemicals has helped to facilitate rodent control operations to improve hygiene conditions. However, critical shortages of fuel, engine oil, spare parts, and pesticides are disrupting essential services, heightening public health risks. Funding equally remains highly constrained. As of today, the humanitarian response plan for the OPT, estimated at 12.06 billion, has received only $540 million. Last week, during my visit to Gaza, I witnessed the impact of all these obstacles and many more. Yet, there were also signs of resilience and renewal. I visited a women-led household garden providing fresh food for the family and local markets. I spoke with women's organizations about their efforts to advance Gaza recovery. And I heard from Gaza We Want Children's Committee, whose message was clear. The children of Gaza deserve to live. They deserve to enjoy their basic rights. They deserve a Gaza free from violence and deprivation, where they can build a brighter future together with their families. We must do everything we can to make this a reality. Mr. President, to do so, we must put in place the mechanism to enable the sustainable recovery in line with Security Council Resolution 2803. UN will continue to provide urgently needed humanitarian assistance and lay the groundwork for early and long-term recovery. The recently published RDNA, carried out jointly with the European Union and World Bank, details the scope of our collective task, and the recent meeting of the Ad hoc Liaison Committee and the Global Alliance in Brussels helped shape a coordinated approach towards formidable challenges ahead. The UN continues to engage with mediators, the Board of Peace, and other actors across the region, working to improve the situation on the ground. The UN Early Recovery Trust Fund, Horizon Fund, established jointly with the PA, is a critical vehicle for our collective effort to scale up recovery and in an effective, accountable, and transparent manner. I wish to express my deep appreciation to France, Italy, Netherlands, and Switzerland for their commitment to the fund. Ultimately, recovery in Gaza must advance long-established political objectives, the reunification of Gaza Strip and the West Bank under a single, legitimate, sovereign Palestinian government, and a restored political process that will end the unlawful occupation and realize the two-state solution in line with relevant Security Council resolutions, international law, and previous agreements. Mr. President, meanwhile, the situation in the West Bank continues to deteriorate. During the reporting period, Israeli planning authorities advanced two plans for over 640 housing units in Area C of the West Bank. And in East Jerusalem, the planning authorities advanced a plan for over 1,620 housing units in the settlement of Pisgat Ze'ev. During the reporting period, 5 Palestinians, including 2 children, were killed by Israeli forces in the West Bank, and 156, including 20 children, were injured by Israeli forces or settlers. According to Israeli sources, 7 Israelis were injured, including one 5-year-old child and 2 soldiers, in Palestinian attacks against Israelis. Throughout the West Bank, the frequency and severity of settler attacks have significantly increased in 2026. Some 220 Palestinian communities have faced attacks, which are increasingly leading to the displacement of the entire communities. On a recent visit to Jordan Valley with members of the diplomatic community, I witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of settler violence, destruction of Palestinian property, and increasing access restrictions. I urge the Israeli authorities to take urgent and concrete steps to stop these intensifying attacks and hold perpetrators accountable. In response to the mounting violence and rapidly expanding settlement footprint, on 11 May, the European Union announced sanctions on Israeli extremist settlers and entities, as well as on leading Hamas figures. In East Jerusalem, the annual Jerusalem Day flag march through the Old City was accompanied, as in previous years, by acts of violence and racist chants by Israeli participants toward Palestinian residents. There were also instances of Israeli senior officials and members of Knesset appearing to violate the status quo at the holy sites. As in the previous years, hundreds of Israeli and Palestinian activists organized teams to prevent violence and to protect Palestinians and their property from attacks. Palestinian officials and political figures have also continued to use inflammatory language against Israel. Separately, on 17 May, the government of Israel approved plans to establish an IDF museum and recruitment center and an office for the Israeli defense minister on the UNRWA compound in Sheikh Jarrah, following its early seizure and partial demolition by Israeli authorities. The Secretary General strongly condemned this decision. On 25 April, Palestinian local elections were held across the West Bank, as well as in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Despite many challenges in the West Bank and dire humanitarian conditions in Gaza, the Central Elections Committee delivered an orderly process demonstrating notable institutional resilience. The United Nations stands ready to support future electoral processes in line with commitments made by Palestinian authorities. Mr. President, in recent months, my colleagues and I have briefed this Council about the potential for progress towards a sustainable political solution. Security Council Resolution 2803 created a crucial window of opportunity. We now have the collective responsibility to ensure its implementation. We cannot ignore the current alarming trends or their dire implications for Palestinians, Israelis, and the entire region. This is the moment to take urgent steps to reverse these dangerous dynamics. Many are still tirelessly pursuing peaceful solutions. On the 30th of April, thousands gathered in Tel Aviv for the People's Peace Summit, calling for an end to Israeli-Palestinian conflict through a political agreement. As the peace activists Aziz Abu Sara and Maoz Inon reminded us in their book, the future is peace. Even those who have endured profound personal loss in this conflict can choose reconciliation over revenge and to work to build peace from the ground up. We must urgently work to return the parties to a path towards an end to the conflict in the context of the two-state solution. The United Nations will continue to support Palestinians and Israelis in achieving these goals. Mr. President, I thank you and the Council for your attention.